When you started your firm, did you go right into the veterans benefits, or was this a discovery process for you?
I did a little bit of everything. I've done a few, years ago, done some personal injury work, criminal work, bankruptcy, real estate, even represented some doctors in the sale of medical practices, uh, states and I did everything. Lots of drunk driving defense cases I did. Uh, I would say at the end of the day, what got me into this field was personal connections with some people that used to be attorneys at the Office of General Counsel in Washington, D.C. So this was not a decision that was made based upon anything other than I had a very good friend who started referring these cases, and it just ended up taking over everything else. So this was not a conscious decision. It's not and the thing is, it's an area that it's very, very technical. And personal injury lawyers talk about things like shelf life and things like that. And our shelf life tends to be very long, and there's no ability to just call up adjusters and settle cases. Okay? It's going to take what it's going to take. We don't have any control over it. So sometimes I've been in these mastermind groups, and most of them are personal injury lawyers, and a case is worth what the injuries are. You know what I mean? It is. So the idea is to get a very seriously injured person and try to resolve the case quickly, and it becomes more profitable because you can churn more of them, right? And you have some ability to push cases a little bit, you know. In our field, that's not possible, and so the approach is just very different to cases. It's harder to manage because you can't really say to your associates, I expect you to settle X number of dollars this month, and then they're on the phone trying to make settlement demands and stuff like that. It doesn't work that way. But it soon evolved, and then at this point in time, we don't take every case. We don't run a high volume operation. It's really focused around our mission, which is to have a transformative effect on the lives of veterans and to make their experience with every interaction in our firm to be an amazing one. So it's a broad thing because it extends beyond the end of the case in the sense that we set up a partnership with Merrill Lynch, and if we help them get money, we help them get into Merrill Lynch, set up brokerage accounts, preserve their wealth, set up plans to manage their money, and things like that, because it's part of our vision and our mission to transform their lives. And we have a non-profit foundation that works with our firm that I'm the executive director of, and we put on events where we have physicians come and speak to try to talk about topics helping them improve their health, things along those lines. So it's a broad area, and it's rewarding. It's rewarding work, I have to say. That's what keeps us in this and what keeps us going. But in terms of, I back to your question, you prefaced the question by talking about this idea of saturation. And, our mutual friend Bill Jowitz, I taught a course with him once with the New Jersey Bar Association called Niche Practices, right? And he had shared all kinds of different examples. And some of them were like, even if in the personal injury world, you got the sort of like the, one motorcycle rider to the next kind of, I ride too, and so if you've got a bike accident, come to me. There's certain segments of it that are niched. I had an attorney guy that I knew that only did bed bug cases. You know what I mean? He's the bed bug guy. So, it's yeah, I guess you could say it's there are advantages to a niche, but I'll tell you a quick example. End of last year, end of 2021, probably beginning of the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, the VA, the government stopped paying and held up all the legal fees for close to 8-9 months, and it almost put people out of business. And the big bar association that we go to in our field, one of the speakers talked about this topic and talked about the idea of diversifying as a hedge against those situations. So there is pros and cons to, and so some of the people I know in some of these mastermind groups say, look, start taking personal injury cases as a hedge against something like this happening. I mean, there's wisdom in that because it's like it's like the business lawyer that's got one bank as a client, and then that one bank leaves and his whole practice is gone. So yeah, niches are good in many ways, but I think many in our field learned over the last year or so that there is advantage to some diversification as a hedge against something going wrong, if that's the
Yeah.
only way you're getting any revenue.
Yeah, and definitely pros and cons to niching, right?
Yeah.
You can expand your total addressable market, go after other different areas of the laws, protect, insulate yourself to recessions and different things. Like imagine being the cruise injury attorney, when COVID
Hmm.
was really hitting.
Yeah, yeah.
But for all those negatives, there's a lot of positives. And for me, this quote, because I'm a niche agency too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I can
sure.
really speak to this and have a good, deep conversation with you about this. And it's really triggering a lot of questions myself, and
Yeah.
it's self-serving. But he has this quote, Tony Robbins talks about, don't fall in love with your product or service, fall in love with helping your client. And so you said, look, hey, I'm not going to go after these other areas of the law, but I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to provide more value. I'm going
Right.
to go to Merrill Lynch and do this because that's what's next, and I'm helping them.
Right.
So I guess my first question is, have you had the shiny object syndrome of, oh, maybe I should go over here? Is that a constant battle? Because it is for me. And when
Yeah.
did it really click that, hey, I'm just going to go deep and stay focused?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only time, I guess there have been various times when legal changes in the law have happened in our field where a certain degree of nervousness sets in, and you start thinking maybe I need to hedge and get other things going. So the idea that there's some other great thing that I should be going after has never really been in and of itself a factor. I think it's more driven by fear if something goes wrong in the current area. Should I have some other things going on? So I think the decision to go deeper is in some ways also a realization that it's easy to really, in this particular field, it's very complex, okay? Especially those of us that practice at the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. It's heavy-duty appellate work at the U.S. Court of Appeals, and it's not something you fool around with. And I realized early on that to really be good at this, it's not something to do as a hobby or to dabble in. And so it's easier to focus and get good at one area than it is to try to be good at multiple areas. Now, I know bigger firms solve that problem by having different departments in their firm, and so I guess in that case, you weigh the benefits of, what those other areas of practice do for your brand, it depends on how big you are, I guess, Um, but for me, like, when you build systems and you develop structures in your office, it's easier to just focus on building one.
Yeah.
So it's just for me, it's easier. Now, I suppose if you grew to the point where you just started bringing on different departments with experts in that field, then obviously that problem is solved as well. But then the question is, in my mind, you get away from that sort of smaller boutique practice and you start becoming a more full service law firm at some point. Because I take Morgan and Morgan in Florida, right? You know what I mean? They add all kinds of practices. They're I guess, is a very large personal injury firm, but they've added other things, based on market research and so forth. Um, I don't know. That's my feeling about it. Is that it's for me, it was easier to become an expert in one thing than to become an expert in all things. Um, And at this point, I don't know if I really want to abandon the small niche boutique practice in favor of a multi-department, larger firm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm just interested in that, you know.